You are here, a grateful twist on life's disruptions and hardest moments. I share inspiring stories of resilience featuring women who have overcome incredible adversity. I hope you find comfort and inspiration as we learn and grow together. Today, I will be hosting Diana Dunbar Place, founder of the Third Act Quest, the 333 Collective Third Act Stories, and the Biennial Quest Gathering, connecting fiercely curious women 50 plus to inspire, support, and collaborate as they create the best chapter in their life story. After years of dancing on the edges of her passions through a roller coaster life and career, it was the coincidence of 4 lightning strike experiences, as she calls them, a cancer diagnosis, loss of a business, her 60th birthday, and a soon-to-be empty nest that compelled her to dig deep to focus on what she truly wanted to do with this one wild and precious life. Welcome, Diana. I am so thrilled that you are here with me today.
Me too, Tanya. Thank you for having me. I love it.
Yes, and it's great to see you after all these years.
Oh my gosh, I'm still sort of stunned by the fact that we've reconnected since I think it was 1993, something like
93
that.
sounds about right in Boston. Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, I am so excited to hear about what's been going on with you. I know since the internet came into fashion, we've reconnected via social media platforms, but I have not had a chance to really get caught up with this big shift for you. So, yeah, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. So for me, I reflect a lot. You know, I'm 65, and this last 5 years, I've really dug in a lot more deep than I ever have. And there are so many moments, I call them aha moments, not just moments that I listen and feel and perceive a need to do something different, to change, or I have some sort of a realization, but for me, it's a message that comes from within my heart and from outside in the universe is calling to me. And so what really has been the most important aha moment of my life, I've had a few fun ones. Some are life disruptions, some are, totally leveling kind of events. I've had a few of those, as we all do as we get to this age, but for me, it was 2018, and I'll never forget this really wild time in 2018, April. I had just come back from my niece's wedding in Virginia. It was beautiful. I was with my mother and the family, but I knew something was wrong. I had been going through some really odd symptoms, and I'd sort of tamped down my fear and said, "Oh, sure, it's fine. I'm healthy. Sure, it's fine." However, that moment in Virginia, I looked in the mirror and I noticed that not only was I feeling weird in this area, but my left eye was larger and seemed to be popping out of my eye. And I said, okay, something's seriously going on here. So later that week, I found myself sitting in front of an ENT doctor who I'd never even met before, who actually read me the results of a biopsy. And he was beautifully clear. And in that moment, I found out that I had a very aggressive head sinus cancer. And shortly thereafter, that's why I call it the 4 lightning strikes. Shortly thereafter, I had to shut down a business. I had been working myself really to the bone for the last 4 years to launch something. That month, coincidentally, boom, had to shut that down. I also, as I drove away, the biggest thought, the biggest concern in my head wasn't, oh my God, I'm going to die. It wasn't any of that. It was, how am I going to tell my 15-year-old daughter that her mother has this really rare head cancer? Like, how the hell am I going to do that? So flash forward in the upcoming months, I had so many beautiful miracles come my way. Starting with arriving in my driveway and looking in my yard and seeing no fewer than 30 or 40 beautiful goldfinch swirling all around. I mean, literally. And I looked at them and I said, thank you. You've come to heal me. Over the next few days, circumstances like a meeting with a top doc in Boston. Within 2 days of calling, how many times can you get an appointment that quickly? I had friends that gathered around me and literally took my hand and led me through a series of, I would literally say, no less than miracles. One was a new friend of mine who I just met several years ago. She was in her 80s, but had an experience in the insurance business, and she literally, without her, I would not have been able to receive the life-saving treatments I got in Boston because my insurance as an entrepreneur was New Hampshire only. Flash forward, she raises it up to the head of my insurance company, and they gave me a special exception for a series of really wild, head and neck radiation treatments. I can't even account for all of these little miracles, but I like to say I felt like from being a control freak like I am, I let go. And I felt like I was on one of those moving walkways at the airport. So the control freak who has to know everything didn't Google my cancer. I didn't ask the doctors any questions about it. I didn't say, what stage am I? I didn't do any of that. I just kept focus on my faith in the ability to heal. I eventually, after some really good advice, figured out how to tell my daughter. And I'll never forget the day sitting right over on the couch. I told her not to be afraid. I told her not to Google it. I told her just to know that I loved her and that I'd be okay. And that I didn't want her to be one of my caregivers. She was supposed to get her driver's license, do all of that stuff, which she did. She then, I'll never forget this, it's hanging on my wall. She sat down and drew this, I'm going to cry, drew this painting, this watercolor painting of the earth, and under it a hand, and in each quadrant of this round earth were different parts of nature that I loved. So it sounds like I'm talking about the most exciting adventure of my life, and in a way it is the most beautiful experience. Yeah, I was terrified, like every once in a while. Yeah, it was shitty, going through chemo, losing my hair, picking an ugly wig, all that stuff. However, coming out of it was the most beautiful experience I've had. It has fed me every single day since to recognize, that quote you read, Mary Oliver's end line to one of her poems, tell me what you plan to do with your one wild and precious life. I live that way every day now. I was always a little bit of a workaholic, sort of still am, but I really, really believe in every single moment of preciousness, no matter what's happening. So I felt like I had been set free from a life that would not have been as beautiful as it is now by this crazy confluence of circumstances in that 1 month. So that's really the basis of my story and my most exciting aha moment so far.
Yeah. It's so interesting because the overlap between when you met me and I was 22 and had just had a very similar aha moment as you, where I wasn't sure what was down the line for me. There was what was the common thought about it at the time, and then a doctor really changed my life. I've told that story in the first episode. But yeah, and I often say I wish I could give people this perspective without them having to go through something like this.
Absolutely.
Because when you come from that perspective, you understand that the beauty and the sorrow are really tightly connected. You cannot have one without the other. We find beauty because we know it's fleeting, right? We know that it will end. This too will change. And so I always think they're sort of this they're different side of the same coin. I just happened to stumble all over that coin when I was very young. But it really changes the way you sort of make your decisions in life, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I'm sorry that you had to go through all that, but I'm glad you found your way to the other side. I mean, it's a beautiful, the other side has its own benefits, you know?
Well, it doesn't escape me. You know that expression, it hit me square between the eyes. So it's like,
Yeah.
that's the universe, like, boom, because that's where
Yeah.
my tumor was. It took that. Sadly, it took that. I love what you mentioned, though. There's this great book called Life is in the Transitions by Bruce Feiler, and he interviews hundreds of people about their life disruptions. And what's so interesting is your disruption in some ways was a very early gift for you in a very weird way. As you say, it's
Yeah.
sort of interwoven. But so many of us have these disruptions collectively. Like, look at COVID. That was the biggest universal collective disruption. And
Yeah.
I remember being fascinated to see how it would change us. And it has in some good ways, lots of loss, but I find it very interesting to sort of map life based on
Yeah.
these disruptions and how we rise and fall and flip around or whatever.
Yeah. Agreed. And I talk about that in the description. It's so funny. I use the word disruptions, and sometimes I talk about the cosmic 2x4 that
Yeah, yeah,
smacks you
yeah.
upside the head or rips the rug out from underneath you. I mean, there's a million metaphors for it, but yeah, it can really, I guess it can change you for the good or the bad, honestly, depending on how you take it. But, I think this podcast is about talking to the women who've really leveraged that into finding new and more exciting places and realizing that this is not a dress rehearsal. You get one shot, right? And so what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with it? It's not a dress rehearsal. Stop fiddle farting around. So yeah.
Or stop letting fear have the driving wheel on the journey, right?
Yes.
It's like you get in the friggin' backseat, fear. You got to be there to warn me if there's a cliff, but other than that,
Yes. Exactly. You don't control the wheel or the radio, I say.
right? Or the GPS.
Or the GPS. Yes,
Yeah, rip
exactly.
up the map. Yeah.
Yeah, just scream if something's going wrong. I love that. Don't let us be Thelma and Louise.
Oh man. Oh, that's a great image, isn't it? Wow.
So, are there any other things besides observing these miraculous moments that you've came across when you were going through this? What else has helped you sort of rebuild and restructure and move forward?
It's a great question. So, I adjusted my way of being in the world dramatically. I had, like many women, buried my own needs for much of my life, behind the work to dos, the community, the family, everything else. And when I was building the prior business that I'd been working on for 4 years, that literally, as I say, I set the table and I was ready to launch it fully. I found myself, because being a mother, I was a late in life mother, and so being a mother was really important to me. So when my daughter was home from school, the dinner thing, help with the homework if needed, chit chat, and when she'd go to bed around 9 or 10, I'd start working again. I can't even tell you how many times I worked until the birds sang in the morning, and like that is not good self-care, right? But I did that. And for a little while, I have to say, I beat myself up and said, you grew that cancer. And, I quickly shut that little inner critic down. So what I did is I got more sleep. I really spent a lot of time painting, which I hadn't done before, but it's like a passion of mine. What I did at those times is immerse myself in nature. For a while, I wasn't really strong enough to hike or anything like that, but I have a little spot that I could just sit and watch the goldfinch. I could marvel at the emergence of flowers. I literally could live inside of flowers. So I really immersed myself in nature. I read a lot of beautiful books and poetry. I had this affirmation that I said to myself every time I passed a mirror. I just said, every one of your 300 billion cells is on your side and making you strong and wise and healed. And I would thank my body. So many people, and this isn't to judge them, but so many people feel like they're a victim of cancer and they have to kill it, they have to fight it. I never said I'm fighting it. I said to my cancer, I said, hey, got the message. You can go away now. And I appreciate the message, but bye-bye. So that made me feel like I had some power. I also found a lot of alternative caregivers to augment a traditional path of chemo and radiation. I did not have surgery, but it was about, all total, a daily radiation of 8 days. I had to live in Boston. I was away from home, all that stuff. But I found once a week my way to this amazing Reiki practitioner. And I credit mindset, belief, faith, all of that on my behalf. But the oncologist told me I was going to lose my vision in my left eye because the radiation would zap the optic nerve, and that all these things were going to happen. I was going to have a feeding tube because all the blisters in my throat and my mouth. And I looked at her and I said, no, I'm not. And she goes, yeah, you are. I said, no, I'm not. And my Reiki woman, Libby Barnett, I love this woman, would do Reiki on me every week. And she said, oh my God, you're sucking in that energy. And I felt the strength, and I still can see, and I didn't have any blisters. So I just had this great excitement about exploring all sorts of other modalities beyond traditional medicine, food, lifestyle, all that.
Yeah, I do believe that perspective, mind shift, all of that stuff plays a really key role. I love that you talk to yourself in the mirror. I get it. I think it's important. I mean, I should talk to myself in the mirror more. But I think what strikes me about that is that it's basically visualization, right? You're speaking it into the world. And I know it's a delicate balance between, I don't want to get into the blame the victim mentality, but I do think we do have some personal power involved in this. The mind is a powerful thing. And if you believe that you are going to die, then you probably will. We're going to all die anyway. But, I know that we can make ourselves sick if we just think about it long enough. It's like, I remember as a kid just being like, I don't want to go to school today. And I could think myself into being sick, and not just faking it, but really making myself sick. And so I could ditch and not have to deal with school. I was just like, I don't want to go to school today. So I do think there's something to it. And I remember early in my diagnosis that I didn't have as many T cells as I had hoped. So I felt like I was starting off with already a lowered immune system. Meanwhile, the person who gave it to me had more T cells than I did, but he had also had it longer than I had. But he would call me sometimes and he'd be like, what are you doing? Like, I'm so scared. I'm so scared of dying. And I was afraid of it, of course, dying young, but I never took it on like that. Like, I just thought it's my job to 100% focus on keeping myself well. And so before I would go get my tests, I would visualize, I'd lay in bed as I went to sleep at night, and I would think of the T cells, having being a T, and I would envision them going through this sort of guillotine where it would split them in half, and as they sort of warbled out of the machine, they would grow another arm. And I would I'm doubling my T cells right now as we speak. And I would go and my results would come back and I had more T cells. And I really think that visualization has something to do with that. And I forget about it sometimes in my personal life these days for other things. Like visualization is helpful in so many areas of our life if we really tap into it.
It is, to me, it's everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I love your T cell visualization.
Isn't that
I
hilarious?
totally forgot about this. The first time I went to get a full PET scan to see if the cancer was elsewhere, I remember lying in there, not going, oh no. I had these visual images of it would start off white and then it would go beautiful blue, these undulating things. And across every test I had, that came back, which was just sort of like this bathing my body in this super energy of healing. And I can still conjure that up. And I really wish I could translate and let someone else see them, but it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
So yeah, visualization is extraordinarily powerful. There's actually, I read a lot about the way the brain works and neural pathways work around beliefs and things like that, but they are proving, finally, science is backing up what we know intuitively here, which is extraordinarily cool. Really cool.
Yeah. And the other thing that you said that I think is really important too is the way we take care of ourselves, what we eat, what we put into our body, are we exercising? All of those things play a role in keeping our spirits up, right? I think dance and movement and walking, whatever your jam is really good for our mental health. And
Oh,
I think keeping yourself as mentally healthy as you can. And then, I don't sit around and eat a lot of junk food. My biggest habit is dark chocolate.
well, I was going to say,
That's a daily habit of mine.
I had some of that yesterday and went, yeah, I love it.
I'm convinced dark chocolate is good for you.
Totally is. Totally is.
All the antioxidants. Yeah.
Actually, pure cacao is really good for you. So
Yeah.
dark chocolate is
Yeah.
just a little step away with a little sugar.
Yeah, just a little. It's a little manageable. Although some days I overdose, I think. I just want more.
It's
I'm a
medicine.
chocolate monster.
Yes, it's medicine, right? Man, Tanya, I just have to say, we're in this conversation and I've just had so many flashbacks to you as your 22-year-old self. And I was blown away by you then, and I'm even more now. I have to say that, your diagnosis was the ultimately most frightening diagnosis anyone could have. And
Yeah,
you're,
back then for sure.
especially back then, it's
Yeah.
amazing. It's all a mystery. And your, not only your attitude, but your resilience. And like when I met you, I just remember you just exude this energy. So I really
Thank
didn't
you.
have fear for you when I met you. For some reason, I was like, she's good.
Yeah.
It's really wonderful.
Thank you. That's very kind. I do think that it helped having a really good doctor. And she was the one that sort of set me up for success with that and planted some seeds for me because there was new research coming out and there was a group of people who were living 15 to 20 years with basically no immune system and they didn't know why, but they were studying it. And so she said, it's my job to keep you alive long enough to figure out how that's happening. And so I just believed her. I was like, yep, I'm in for it. And, then Mark came along. And that's how I met you, right? Mark Sawyer. And I talk about him in my story too,
Group, the living with group.
yeah, he was kind of a pivotal force for me too, because he was so ill I mean, he had basically no T cells. He had Kaposi sarcoma on his face. He was clearly, but he was still so full of life and not giving up. He wasn't give up one moment of one day. And he was just a really beautiful role model for me. I remember going to dinner. You were probably at one of those dinners where we sat around the table and we'd be eating, and he would just pull out his little, infusion thing and click it in and take his medicine at the table. And I was just like, there he is, acting like it's no big deal. He's just going to be here with his friends. He's going to have a nice dinner, and he's going to make sure he takes care of his health and take his medication in public and not blink, not think about it. Like, he just embraced it in a way that showed me how to live with dignity.
I also think the part of the fuel he had to survive as long as he did was the fact that he used his gifts, not just his gifts of energy and positivity, but his design gifts. Remember those?
Yes, that's how I got connected with him. Was I bought one of those, and then I ended up going back and buying a couple more because I knew the proceeds went to research. And so my dad saw one, or maybe I gave my dad one, and he was like, I want to know who this is. I want to make a donation. And so he made a donation to Mark. And then that's how we got connected. And then Mark kind of invited me into his little circle. And then you and I connected with him and did that project. I can't even remember what that project was for, but that whole educational little booklet that we created, I think I have a copy of it in my attic somewhere. But yeah, that was pretty amazing.
Actually, that followed up meeting him and venturing into that very meaningful period of my life, because I'd been in an ad agency. And I had another one of my messages from the universe one day, which I won't go into, but led me to quit my job and start a cause marketing business where I tried to support nonprofit institutions by marrying them with for-profit corporations. And Mark was one of our first projects. I remember so many lunches with him where I just marveled. Like you say, he'd have his infusion set up and he wouldn't care that anybody saw it. So many people were burying and so fearful at that time, and he wasn't. And I loved him. I really absolutely loved him. So, and that's what brought us together too, which was a beautiful, beautiful, fun project that we worked on together. So
yeah. It was a great project. Yeah, I always thought that if I had a son, I would name him Sawyer, but I never got a chance. But I did want to honor him for sure, because he was a big, big influence in my life.
Well, I just love talking about him now because I have a sense that he knows,
Yeah. Agreed. So, as we wrap this up, what are a couple of tidbits of wisdom that you might want to share with our listeners?
I guess the message that I share with women in our what's called Third Act Quest and 333 Collective, which is really founded for women over 50 to embrace life, not to step back, to embrace possibility and put fear in the backseat. So one of the things I spend a lot of time on is having them reconnect and remember who they truly are. Sometimes it takes going back to your 5-year-old self, but you need to dig in sometimes. We have so much time in our midlife where we get buried under responsibilities and disruptions and all sorts of behaviors that let our negative beliefs win. And so I try to get people to do, I like to say, it's time for you to really reconnect with who you are. And any of us can do that. I don't care what circumstances, financially, health-wise we are. We all need to give ourselves the gift of some time to do that. And then once we do it, we need to identify just our passions, our calling, our purpose. All of those words get overused, but to me, we need to unleash our dreams, especially the wildest ones. Because the wildest ones, I just got goosebumps when I said that. The wildest ones are the ones that are truly what will make your heart beat faster, make you explode when you start talking about it. You really need to give yourself that gift. These things are figure outable. These things are doable in some version. I said to this one woman who was like, well, oh boy, I wanted to be a prima ballerina. I wanted to be a ballerina, but I, lost that opportunity. I said, yeah, you're 60. You're not going to be a prima ballerina. Even if you were 30, you probably wouldn't. But dance. You can dance. And by the way, that'll help you. And stop maligning what you don't have and embrace what you do. That's sort of where we started in this is like, so that's my biggest advice to women is like, stop limiting your vision of possibility. Stop limiting it. Go wild. Dream. And
Yeah.
then take steps to make it happen. I'm looking at your surfer girl. I'm assuming at some point in time you decided you wanted to surf. So many women go, oh, that's hard, it's scary, there's sharks, all that shit. You said, I really want to do this. And you did. Like I was talking with you earlier and saying, I really want to do this. And now I've just said to myself, go try it.
Daughter, she'll take you. She'll give you some pointers. It's never too late. I think you're so right. What's that?
No, that's, you ask for words of advice. It's
Yeah.
just like, go unleash them,
Yes.
and go for it.
Yes. I so agree. And I think when I heard you talking about that, like, oh, I wanted to be a prima donna ballerina or prima ballerina, that we put these restrictions on it, right? Because of the controlling side of us that says it has
Mhm.
to look exactly like this. And I think when we do that, we overlook the possibilities because we're so busy. We're not in control of a lot of things. We're in control of our perceptions, our thoughts, our behaviors, right? We can't affect anybody else's. We can't even affect what life has coming down the pipe for us. So for me, especially now that as I've gotten older and wiser, it's like I want to do this thing. I don't really know why, but I really want to do this thing. And so you just start walking that way, right? And then it will become whatever form it's meant to become if we just let go just a little bit, right? So
Mhm.
you're right in advising her, just go dance. Who cares? There doesn't mean there's not a stage for you to perform on someplace, right?
Absolutely.
Because there's probably other women is similar age who are dancers who might want to put together a performance, or you guys get together and do it yourself. Like, we just limit ourselves. We talk ourselves out of things. I do it all the time. I'm so guilty of it. And I almost
Mm.
talked myself out of this podcast because I had a moment of fear. I like woke
What
up
the
in the
heck?
middle of the night having a panic attack and I was like, "Who do you think you are starting a podcast?" And I just like went back to sleep and I woke up in the morning after I calmed down. I went back to sleep. I woke up in the morning. I was still really tense about it. And I was like, "Fear, I see you. I know what you are."
Right?
You and I same thing. Just get in the back seat. We're going to see what happens here. Doesn't have to be a huge success, but we're trying this. We said it, we're doing it. So,
Well, you know what? Your fuel is your why, right? And your why is beautiful. You've been through a lot. You want to share what other women have been through. So, women that are holding back, who are afraid, might go, I see myself there. I see that it's possible. If she's doing it, why can't I? Why can't I have this more free approach? Why can't I just follow the breadcrumbs or whatever my heart's saying? Why can't I just follow the breadcrumbs for a little while and see where it leads me? And if I fail or I don't like it, change. It's
that's one thing we all do. We all fail, without a doubt, at some point. But it's around how you frame the failure, right? Was it a failure or was it a learning experience, right? And I don't want to, buff it up and shine it and say, a turd is not a turd, but
oh my God, you know that Nelson Mandela quote? I love this. It's like, don't. Don't judge me by my success. Judge me by how many times I fell down and picked myself up. And that's inspiring. It's like that's resilience muscles, right?
Yes, they have to be flexed.
Mm,
Yeah,
mm,
so that is my hope, is that people get a little more inspired to go after whatever it is they're after. And also I think it's important that we start talking about how we recover. How we recover is important part of the conversation. And I think that we haven't talked a lot enough as women about the things that are going on in our life.
mhm.
And so I do think that just having conversations that people can listen to, and if they don't necessarily need the advice, they may find, or the help down the road, they may think, here I am, knocked to the ground.
Well, what you just mentioned is so important, I think, because so many of us think we have this devastating disruption, and oh my God, it's been 3 months and I'm still feeling scared or I'm still feeling down. I think that's the other thing I would say. Give yourself grace. The norm, like any disruption in your life, takes not just a month or two, it can take 5 to 7 years, they say, before you fully process and rise up after a major disruption. So be patient with yourself is the other thing. Don't like go, oh my God, I must be so weak. I can't deal. Of course, it's hard stuff we deal with, but we can do these things. We can.
We can do these things. And I think the grace thing is so important. And it's something that I've really been gifting myself permission to do. Give yourself grace, give yourself grace, give yourself grace. And the more I say it, the more easy it is to remember it. And we
Mm.
spend so much time beating up on ourselves. We spend so much time judging ourselves. And if we could just talk to her a little kinder and say sweet things to her,
Yeah.
she'll be a better person for it. And so, yeah, grace is definitely something we need to, we all have that inner child that needs a little hug every once in a while, needs a little, chaperone down the road. So, yeah, it's the way we show up for ourselves that becomes really important.
One other thing I'll say too that I think is such a beautiful gift for this time of life after 50, 60, and beyond is some of the stuff that typically women do to each other, the competitiveness. I had the corporate workplace where God, either the devil that wears Prada boss or the woman standing behind me ready to push me out of my job and take it. I am now at a place where women I work with or women I know were all much more apt to support and care for each other than when we were younger. I'm not a psychologist, but I believe this, that we need each other when we realize it and we're finally releasing a lot of the stuff that younger girls, especially in the teenage years, can bully each other and be so tough. So that's another thing, is just to to actively find and seek out women who get you, see you, hear you when you succeed, aren't jealous, and who pick you up and carry you when you need them. And those are the women that, or friends that are the inner circle. Those that are toxic and not, need to weed the garden and make sure every interaction is one that is healthy. And that's a big thing for us at this age, I believe, as well.
Weeding the garden, I love that. Yeah.
Oh,
There are
hard.
things we need to let go of for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wonderful.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so happy that you came and talked to me today.
Mm, thank you. I am too. It's wonderful to see you and spend time.
And hopefully, we'll get a chance to connect in person one of these days soon on our travels. Once again, I am so glad that you are here. I'm happy you joined me in Diana Dunbar Place today. I will put all her links below where you can find out more about Third Act Quest and the 333 Collective and all of her social media sites. So if you'd like to connect with her and find out more, please check the notes below and you should find everything you need. Until next time, be well.